I've got a question for you. If you could somehow figure out the exact location of where you were going to die, would you go there? Wouldn't you avoid that place at all costs? That is the essence of a supermodel known as inversion. Alright, so let's start off with this story. My friends are going to hate me because of how many times I've repeated this particular anecdote. So guys, if you are watching, bear with me. So in August of 2019, I had taken part in a corporate fest known as Genesis. So corporate fests are essentially mock business competitions to see who can lie the best. It was the first time that I had taken part in a fest outside of my college. So I was nervous. I did not know a lot going into this. Alright, so I'd gotten through 3 rounds, doing decently well, and I'd made it to the final round alongside 2 very strong competitors. So when the time came, they handed the final task to us. Here's what it was. We were asked to pick lots that had the names of multiple states in them. So a bunch of chits, and we had to, basically they were just names of states that you had to pick from. So the state that you picked was essentially your target audience, and you were supposed to come up with the product and present it in front of the judges in less than 15 minutes. Not just that, we were also supposed to prepare a PowerPoint presentation and were handed a chart paper which was to be used in our presentation. So yeah, a daunting task to say the least. So I took my pick, and out of all the states I got the state of Tamil Nadu. Here's where inversion comes in. I was on a time crunch. There was absolutely nothing that I could come up with that could possibly get me the dub in less than 15 minutes. What am I going to do? My brain was stuck. I mean, there's no creative ways to sell any product. My brain's not coming up with the product. There are no creative ways for me to be using the chart paper in the presentation. But hold up. Creative ways of using a chart paper in the presentation. Looking at it conventionally, you would expect your competitors to be using the chart paper as some sort of a placard to display something in their presentation. What can I use a chart paper for? They are definitely going to be using it as placards. What do I come up with? What can I use a chart paper for? Sure, like a garment? Let's do that. I'm like, alright, garment it is. How do I incorporate Tamil Nadu into this? I'm like, okay, what in your head, what's the most stereotypical Tamil Nadu Tamilian dress do you have in mind? I'm like, lungi, I guess. I'm like, okay, sure, let's go with lungi then. Here's where I go off the rails. I'm like, okay, how do I make this lungi differently? Because there are so many lungis on the market. It's a marketing fest, by the way, if I've not already mentioned it. So it's a marketing round, and I'm supposed to sell lungi in a very creative way. I'm like, how do I make this creative? I was like, I don't know, dude, just make it waterproof or something. And I'm like, waterproof lungi. And as silly as it sounds, I got up on that stage and I put up a skit using my chart paper as a lungi to just completely override marketing jargon and just general technical marketing terms, right? I just completely overrode that. I'm like, screw it, we're going balls deep into the most humorous thing that I could possibly think of, and I got on stage and I did it. I put up a tiny skit where the people organizing helped me out in the skit as well. I used satire, I used my unbelievable charisma, and I used inversion to get me through the final round. And I have been warned, particularly by my seniors, to not overdo the humor aspect because it could easily backfire. But to my teammates, my seniors, and my competitors' surprise, waterproof lungi got the dub. Yep. And all of this happened just because I approached a problem in a different direction. I did not think of a product and then use a chart paper. I used a chart paper and then came up with a product. So it was inverse of what everyone thought, and sometimes inverse thinking is what gets you the dub. So this concept of inversion dates back to a German mathematician from the 19th century called Carl Gustav Jacobi. Great dude, apparently had tons of achievements and shit, made large strides in the field of mathematics, but we're going to completely ignore that and focus on what's important to us. The concept of inversion. So what we'll be focusing on was his ability to solve hard problems by following this idea of invert, always invert. So he believed that one of the best ways to clarify your thinking was to restate a mathematical problem in inverse form. He would write the opposite of the problem that he was trying to solve, work backwards, and he would find that the solution sometimes often came to him pretty easily. And then this idea was picked up by a lot of other mathematicians. Finally, it got to Charlie Munger, and he mentioned this in one of his speeches. I do not recall which one. But inversion became a very important thinking tool for the 21st century. It is not enough to think about a problem one way, you've got to think about it forwards and backwards. So working backwards on a problem forces you to uncover every possible thing you know about the problem. So, enough dilly-dallying. I love that word so much. Let's get into the practical uses of inversion. So let's start off with something that you might have struggled with or currently are struggling with, and we all are basically. And it's some form of success. Now, success could mean anything to you. It varies from person to person and depends on the field you're trying to pursue success in. But the underlying principles to get to the top 10, top 1% are generally still the same. So let's look at success through the singular lens of one question. How can you ensure that you're going to be successful? How can you ensure your success? Here comes the idea of Premedtatio Malorum, which roughly translates to the premeditation of all evils. So this thinking tool was first birthed by Stoic philosophers such as Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus. I love that. So the goal of this exercise was to list out everything you possibly could think of that would get in the way of your success. I'm sure some people who are into startups might have heard the idea of kill the company, where employees gather around in a meeting and try to discuss all the things that could kill their company in the next 6 months. So everything from the state of the markets, your product, your goodwill, the way your PR, things of that sort, right? So everything that could potentially kill the company, you try to either minimize it or avoid it altogether. So that's essentially how the concept of Premedtatio Malorum works. So you envision a goal or the idea of success in a particular field, and you think of, we're constantly thinking of adding things to get to that place. But I think it's more important to remove additional factors and things that could cause failure, things that could potentially lead you down the wrong path of success. So yeah, that's basically how you use inversion to cap your downsides, basically. So a common trope in these days when it comes to the self-help space is the idea of productivity, right? We want to be more productive, we want to get more done constantly, we've got to be constantly working, hustle, grind, whatever, Sigma mindset, whatever it is, right? Whether it's meditation, journaling, scheduling your day, things of that sort. We always want to do more to make it seem like we're getting closer to our goals. There seems to be always something more that you can be doing. But inversion, when it comes to productivity, nudges you to consider the opposite. So basically, when you use inversion when it comes to productivity, it forces you to think about things that distract you. You've got to really think about what makes me lose focus, what causes apathy, are there some keystone bad habits that I have in my life. So using inversion when it comes to productivity, you're supposed to be identifying these things that cause apathy, unproductivity, basically the opposite of what you're trying to achieve, and then start identifying and eliminating these things. So you've got to remove, let's say your phone distracts you when you're working. Let's say you're working on a project of yours and your phone's constantly pinging and you're getting notifications, and every time you go off you find it harder to come back on. So you block a particular hour out of the day where you turn your phone off completely, put it in another room, and just sit down to work. It's insane how well this works. I mean, not this particular example, but considering things that you could be removing out of your life. So again, inversion kind of acts as a subtractive measure, not an additive measure. Our world is so driven by more things that we can do, more things that we can add to our lives to improve the quality of our lives. But sometimes I think it comes down to just decluttering. There's so many things that we have just picked up without intentionally thinking about them, that sometimes it's best to just simplify. And simplification is basically the whole goal of inversion. Yes. The age-old problem, happiness. As a society, we have such huge misconceptions about what really makes us happy and what makes us unhappy. It's insane. Like, because I think we have somewhere along the line we have swapped the word convenience for happiness. So whatever makes you comfortable must feels to us as if that's what's gonna make us happy. But what do I know, right? I'm a fucking 21-year-old making videos in my tiny room. There's nothing that I know about happiness. However, there's one resource that I would point to if you're struggling with this question. It's a course, it's a free course on Coursera known as The Art of Living Well. I do not know if I'm saying that right, but it's a mind-blowing course. You've got to check it out. I think it's a course for almost anyone. I'm not going to try to sell it. Just go check it out if you're interested. Okay, so coming back to happiness. If you try to tackle happiness in a conventional way, what are you going to do? You're going to think of things like, oh, my dream job. If I don't have that dream job, I'm going to be unhappy. I need to be making certain amount of money. So it just provides us with an extremely long list of things that we're very unlikely to have, right? Not all of us are going to be rich. Not all of us are going to be successful. Not all of us are going to have a dream job. It's just, it's based on so much complexity that you cannot just predict those things. For example, right now I could list 50 things that would be nice to have, that I really want to have. But for me personally, I know that these 50 things that I have a list of are not going to bring true contentment into my life. So how do we approach this problem? Let's use a test subject, a hypothetical character known as Robert. Let's go with that. Here's what we're going to do to Robert. We're going to work together. We're going to think of all the ways we could possibly make Robert unhappy. He needs to be driven to the point of wanting to just end it all, right? So how do we do that? One, we cut all connections from people. So we isolate him. We put him in a very solitary environment, right? That's number one. Number two would be give him shitty food. Give him the absolute garbage of foods where his body is not being sustained. If he has certain hobbies, get rid of them. If he has a certain sense of responsibility, get rid of them. So you get the point. Basically trying to get rid of his social connections, his responsibilities, his work, his hobbies, things that he enjoys doing. Give him shitty food, destroy his sleep cycle. Just by doing these things, we basically have a list of all the things that makes a person absolutely want to kill themselves, right? So now that's how you use inversion. So you do the opposite of that. Maintain good social connections. That's a very important key to for happiness, according to a lot of research. Take on responsibility for yourself, for the people around you. Find new hobbies, things that you enjoy doing. Constantly explore. Work out. Eat good food. You get the point, right? That's basically the vast majority of happiness. That's where true contentment in life comes from. That's basically the 80-20 principle. If you do these small amount of 20 small subset of things, the 20%, you're going to get most of your happiness from these things. And then the additional things would be money would be nice to have, sure. A good house would be nice to have. You get the point. That's how you tackle happiness using inversion. Alright, so that's basically inversion principle. But again, it's pretty easy for me to sit here and record a video and talk about this very cool mental model called as inversion and just not take any action towards it, right? It's 10 times harder for you to actually start incorporating this in your life, because I've struggled with it, because inversion is such a vast topic. It can be used almost anywhere to improve almost any aspect of your life, that the paradox of choice, all the things that you could be doing, just paralyzes you into not doing anything. So here's what I would suggest. Start off with small actionable steps. By small actionable steps, I mean consider the vast areas of your life, such as health, your relationships, your success, things that you're working towards, your responsibilities. and just consider the things that could be sabotaging them. Like, instead of adding new things such as like a weekly meeting with your family, consider things that could be possibly hurting your relationship with your parents, such as you arguing for no reason, like something else triggers you and you argue with your parents. That could be something that you could work on. So just working on small actionable steps and then moving forward is probably the best way to go with the principle of inversion. So once you learn to leverage this mental model, you'll be much better off in life than just conventional forward thinking. So ladies and gentlemen, invert, always invert. If you enjoy this video, give it a like, comment if you have something to say about this, share, subscribe. Thank you for watching. I shall see you next week. Goodbye.